Okay, hi everyone. My name is Richard Stockings, Head of Student Wellbeing. I have Ginette Stockings, Deputy Head of British International School, Phuket, and Buick Hamblin, our school counsellor. And we thought we'd take this opportunity to put a kind of live conversation together about the difficulties and the challenges that we're all facing, and particularly coming from an angle of supporting parents. We're going to cover a couple of questions that have been coming up and give you, a few tips from our perspective. And I think the first thing to just say before we get into it is we acknowledge how difficult the situation is for everybody. We're all trying to normalise this time. Nobody really has the right answers. We're all kind of trying to find things out as we go along by speaking with colleagues and other schools and parents and students. And so, yeah, it is just something that is very challenging for everyone. I like the analogy of people having to put their own oxygen mask on first in an aeroplane kind of context. And I think that's one of the things that we would be saying, first of all, to parents. You have to invest in your own well-being during this time in order to be able to cope and support your children through this process. So let's kick this conversation off a little bit about what advice we might have for parents at this time. Maybe I'll start with you, Buick, about sort of the emotional challenges that parents might be facing.
Yeah, I think, like you say, we're all facing the same thing. And I would say one of the most important things is to be kind to ourselves, to try and not be Parent of the Year or Home Teacher of the Year, and just recognise that we're all in this same situation. It's tempting to compare ourselves to other people who look like they're doing better, but I would say, yeah, connect with other people, have a chat, and don't be too hard on yourself.
Ginny, anything from your perspective?
I think one of the things that I'm picking up on is a sense of fear amongst some parents, and actually, especially for us in secondary, people worrying that they can't help because it was such a long time since they were at school, or they weren't very good at that subject when they were at school anyway. And I think that I'd like to reassure parents that there are a number of things that you can do that really help on a practical level without knowing all the stuff and the content. And first and foremost, we've seen a real correlation between students who are working with a very set routine, following their timetables, and therefore being successful. And so as a parent, I think the most you can do is to make it as easy as possible for your child to succeed online in this time, making sure that they try and stick with the daily schedule, that resources are there and available, monitor their workspaces so that they've got a good environment to work in, and most importantly, stop them. Don't let them carry on working over the times. Take those breaks from the screen. And really encourage them to ask their teachers, join in the Google Meets, and ideally, depending on your home situation, sort of tag team things so that you don't feel like you're on duty and monitoring this all the time, because that takes its toll as well.
Great. In terms of managing parents' own well-being in this time, I mean, there's obviously all sorts of things out there. People are getting information all the time, but the same, we're talking to members of the teaching staff and people all over the world. People are investing in their own well-being, and physically, I guess that is talking about being active, active with your children, active yourself, getting out where you can, where it's possible, eating well, making sure that we're still having a balanced diet, getting the sleep. That's a massive one, and particularly important for the young people. So there's that whole physical side that we would really advise parents to continue to take part in. We have a very healthy and active community here anyway, so I'm sure that's not such an issue. What about emotionally, Buick? Would you say it would be a key thing there for parents to be considering again for themselves?
I think, as Ginny's just mentioned, I think sharing the load is an important thing, getting other people involved rather than thinking you have to do everything yourself. I think to identify what really makes you feel better, it's different for all of us. I know for me it's getting out in the fresh air, but identify those things that really do make a difference and make sure you do them. I think another thing is that on a day-to-day basis, we might feel different. We might have a good day and think, oh, actually, I'm managing this really well, and the next day be feeling awful. And I think that's important to recognise that that might happen, and just tell yourself, I'll be fine tomorrow, or by the weekend I'll be feeling different. Not to be too doom and gloom about it, because we are all having bad days.
And I think that's a great point, because we talk to the students in the wellbeing program about the roller coaster ride, that, you know, from day to day you can feel good and you can feel bad, and that can happen within a week, in a day, and it can happen within an hour. And so it's kind of normalising that process again with everybody, that we are going to have fluctuations in how we feel. With children, advice for parents a little bit on how to support them, because again, they're going to be on this roller coaster ride, and it's very unusual for them to be in this situation. What kind of advice do we have for parents when their own children are starting to feel quite down? And we must remember that we hear the term the new normal, but that normal might change. I'm talking about when a child starts to act or behave differently than is their normal. What might be intervening with there? And I'll ask Buick first from a kind of counselling point of view, and then we can talk about how the school is supporting that.
I would say, number one, talk to them, listen to what they've got to say, listen to what their fears are, and try not to be too judgmental. If the fears seem a little bit ridiculous to you, they're not ridiculous to them. So just listen. Give them permission to feel scared. It's okay. We all might feel scared at some point. And then try and reassure them. Try and reassure them that it will be over, that things will go back to some sort of normal. And if you can, do something fun together. If you've got time to just kind of lighten the mood, if they are overwhelmed with work as well as everything else, just take 10 minutes out and do something daft, go and dance together. That would be my advice.
I've actually had lots of stories of parents and families sending me in things through the notices. I'm doing things like that, you know, dancing together, a come dine with me experience where the child cooks for the family.
Yeah.
I'm looking for these, you know, stories, and there's so much good stuff going on in the community, and the families are being really creative at this time. So yeah, great opportunity for that. What about school-wise?
I think school-wise, it's important that we remind students that we genuinely are all there for them, and that there is a daily contact time with their tutor, but their tutor will be happy to help support them at any other time. Teachers are there for them during their lesson times, but again, if you have somebody that there's a connection with, to reach out to that person. And that the school channels remain very much open in terms of helping and supporting students. I had a tutor contact me today, sharing a concern about a student in her form. I arranged a Google Meet, and immediately we've had a really positive chat today. We just really want to help support parents and, of course, all the students in this time.
Yeah, I think it's about using the systems the school already has. I've listened to so many teachers delivering wonderful lessons, but the one thing all the staff are doing is they're caring for the young people as they would do normally. But even more, those relationships can develop online. And so, yeah, reach out. That's the advice. Reach out to teachers. Reach out to heads of section. Myself as a head of wellbeing, to Buick, and keep those channels going. Request coaching conversations, wellbeing conversations, counselling conversations. The more the students talk through this process, we know that's a huge way of coping with the difficulties. In
talking, I think that it would be great, we can attach the GROW model to this and just remind everybody of it. But there are a series of questions on that, which you don't have to know the answers. It's just about getting students to, and your children to talk through what they're finding challenging and what they think solutions or possible things that could help might be. And really, first and foremost, that I think if they just want to be, they need to be listened to. I like very much what you said, Buick. Without judgment, there are days where the smallest thing can be the most stressful, and it might seem ridiculous, but it's not at that time.
I think some of that comes down to the fact that at this time, and Buick and I were talking about this in one of our meetings, that there's a lot more time to think about things. And so some of the little things that you mentioned there that might normally not be a big deal, suddenly there's this amount of time they can escalate. And I'm sure, Buick, you're finding that with some of the conversations with young people.
Yeah.
What about screen time? That's an interesting, I'd be interested in both your views on that, because obviously we normally are advising against too much screen time, and suddenly students are involved in this 7-8 hours. We know we're asking them to get off their computers where they can, but it's very difficult. Teachers are trying to be creative. I'm interested in your thoughts about what we might advise parents on that. I've read various articles, some that are saying you have to accept it and this is part of the new normal, and others saying you've got to be really creative to get them off it. And we have to avoid the potential for addictions to phones and gaming and the impact on eyesight. What's your view on that, Buick, from a kind of counselling perspective?
Well, those fears are understandable, and obviously we are online much more, but I think the connection with friends in particular is really important. They need to have that downtime, and if the only way they can have downtime is chatting online at the moment, then I think that's quite crucial.
I'd recommend a couple of practical strategies. You can easily download Flux onto your computer. Dims the screen lighting when you establish your wake up and bedtimes, and therefore in terms of brain waves and switching off can be really helpful in just softening the lighting and helping things before bed. And as we've said, those moments of taking a break, having fun, doing something different are just really important. But I think there is an acceptance that screen time is going to go up, and we shouldn't beat ourselves up over it. Again, we're not becoming the worst mothers or fathers in the world at this point in time by continuing to encourage perhaps those connections in a different way.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think there's opportunities throughout the day for students to be, active and mobilise themselves and do stretches and, move around. I think that's the key. We can't just sit all day. We have to be mindful of what impact online learning is having on our bodies, and adjust that. I was speaking to the physio coach Zoe, and she was talking about doing quad stretches every day and be aware of how we're sitting and neck. And so some of the stuff we've been doing in wellbeing and advising on that, I think is really relevant at this time. We must take care of our bodies, because we start to get aches and pains, then the whole process becomes uncomfortable. Great. Well, thank you. Is there anything else you'd like to raise?
I just think the only other thing I'd like to say is that if somebody's struggling online and the immediate question is, well, who would you turn to in the classroom first? And if that's a friend, encourage them to make contact with a friend and see if you can find the answer. If it's the teacher, then encourage that. But please be assured that at this point in time, it's the process more than the outcome. And some students are getting quite stressed they haven't finished things, or that they need everything to be complete and perfect. And that's not the case. Engaging in online learning will have huge benefits, not just in terms of a learning process, but a skill set that we can take forward in independence and being proactive. And I think that we've got to flip this situation and find some positives in what we're all going through.
Buick, anything you'd like to add to the conversation before we finish?
Yeah. I absolutely agree with what Ginny's just said. I would also say one little thing about the scheduling or the routine of the day is it's quite important to make weekends different, so that whether it's online time or just doing some other fun things, so that you do feel that you've got a kind of break in your week. I think that's really important too. And if you do get overwhelmed, please get in touch.
Please do.
Please do. And I think just to finish, I think parents and students should actually pat themselves on the back, because I've spoken to many students over the last 5-6 weeks, and they are incredibly resilient. They've been very happy to see us and engage and talk and get involved in what is a different way of learning, and they've adapted incredibly well, probably better than adults. And so I think they actually deserve a lot of credit, and as do you, the parents who are managing on a daily basis. So thank you. And get in touch with any of the people in the school who will support. Thank you.